Hey Eryk, how are you? Welcome to chapter one for Voices of
Awesome.
Experience. I'm so happy to have you here with us today.
Thank you. Very happy to be here. Thanks for taking the time to talk with me.
How are you feeling today before we start?
Feeling like garbage, but that happens sometimes. The difference is that when I say feel like garbage or I feel miserable, it's not for pity or to be negative. It's just to be honest. Because living with chronic illness, you always have people asking you how you're doing, and when it gets to people with your friends, you kind of get like you can either lie about it or you can just kind of be honest and just say, yeah, I'm feeling terrible, but I'm working on it. And, it's just an honest response and it doesn't need to be fixed. And I think that's the hardest thing with talking to people about chronic illness is that they want to try to fix you. They want to try to fix it for you. And so I'm trying to kind of model that you can feel like garbage and still have an okay day. It doesn't mean I can't have a good day. It just means I don't feel good. Probably more of an answer than you were looking for, but oh well.
No, I like it. I think it's fair. Like if you're not feeling well, it's not that you're just complaining. It's fair. So thank you
Exactly.
for sharing that. I'm sure many people are gonna relate to that probably. Unfortunately, though. Before we get started, I just wanted to have a conversation with you because the first time we connected, I thought it was really interesting the approach you had of how to approach a doctor's visit, how to prepare for it, how you had to advocate for yourself when you were first experiencing the symptoms until you got diagnosed. And I think that would be really cool to share with the world and hopefully help some people. But before we start, can you give us a little introduction about you, who you are, what you do, and maybe share one thing that you think people might be surprised about hearing from you?
Okay. Well, my name's Eric. I am a former educator, now work in marketing for a nonprofit. I am also going to school for clinical mental health counseling because that is something that is very important to me, increasingly important to me, as I learn the role that mental health can play in everything that we do. I'm also a content creator on Instagram and TikTok and I'm a writer. I write poetry, essays. Um, yeah, I'm very much bottom line, I'm a storyteller. Whether it's writing stories and poems, whether it's making content, or whether it's painting and actually creating works of art. I believe that the stories we tell are, I don't know, they're important. They were kind of what lets the world know that we're here. Something people would be surprised to know. Usually the thing I say, like, in meetings, I would tell people that I used to do ballet because I don't look
That's cool. I
because
remember that.
it's usually a surprise. Guys don't usually do ballet. Um, my build doesn't look like one that would do ballet. I don't quite have the thin, wispy build that most ballet dancers have. But yeah, it's something that I did and for several years and really loved it.
I remember that from our first conversation. It was a cool fact. Yeah. And for everyone that hasn't seen your profile yet, go check it out. We'll put it in the bio. But it's really, really cool videos, really cool content. Very
Oh,
human
appreciate
content.
it.
Very human content for sure. So, okay, let's maybe dive a bit deeper into your lupus diagnosis, your patient journey. Um, maybe just share a little bit about what your experience has been.
Yeah. So, short version, about 10 years ago, I collapsed while getting ready for a field trip, which led to an ER visit and a series of hospital visits where we didn't quite know what was wrong with me. I just knew that I felt like garbage and my blood pressure was out of control and just all these things were going on. And ultimately, it led to a lupus diagnosis. And the hardest thing with that journey was because I was young, technically. I mean, I was in my 30s when all this started. And so they weren't really looking past the blood pressure. They would just say, well, you just have high blood pressure. Just get that fixed and you'll be fine. And constantly trying to tell the doctors, no, it's more than this. It's more than this. I left the care team I was with and went to a different care team. And my new primary care physician was a kick every rocks kind of person. And she just started looking and running different types of tests. And then I had a serious scare during an ER visit where my heart almost stopped beating.
Hmm.
And that was kind of the thing that, like, then everybody was like, oh, there's something else going on here.
Yeah.
And so I spent 4 days in a hospital, and they did all these different tests and looked at every single different part of my body. And that's when the antibody blood work came up. And so then it was, hey, there's the lupus diagnosis. And from there are other little things around that, like IBS and sleep apnea. My asthma diagnosis became official, around over the years. And most recently, I developed diabetes, and we're not entirely sure if it's just old age or if it's the autoimmune that brought it on. I've heard it's pretty common for that to happen. But with all of this, the hardest part is communicating what's going wrong, because everything that I have, they're all invisible illnesses, if you will. They're
Yeah.
invisible disabilities. They're not, and I don't present as sick.
Yeah.
Because part of it is just when you're when you're miserable all the time, you start learning how to separate your physical misery from your mood. So I could present like I'm having a good day, even if I'm in pain. Um,
Yeah.
if I also have like some serious issues with my spine and the arthritis. I also have arthritis. That's kind of wreaked havoc on my joints and stuff. And there's been times where I've been, in a hospital or in front of a doctor, and they're just like kind of grilling me on the pain levels I'm reporting, because they're just like, you don't look like you're in this level of pain. And so I've had to like learn to explain to them, don't look at my face. My face is not going to tell you how much pain I'm in. I know that's what you're looking for, but I've just learned how to live with it. And so sometimes doctors can struggle to understand what the patient's feeling, not because they don't care, but because they're looking for those behavioral markers. But for somebody who lives with pain, who lives with discomfort, you know, some people learn how to just manage it. I've always had public facing jobs.
Yeah.
So I can't just be, "Oh," I can't do that. So there's been two things that's really helped me. There's one is, how you'll kind of look up your symptoms, you'll get a sense of what you think is going
Mhm.
on. I don't say diagnoses I think I have to doctors anymore. I don't say that at all,
Well,
because here's why. Because if I say I think I have this, then sometimes they'll immediately start to argue with me, because they get, and
wow.
and this is nothing against the doctors. I think it's because there's so much misinformation online that if a doctor thinks that you just Googled your symptoms and tried to like diagnose yourself, they're going to resist that. And I think it's for the right reasons, actually. I don't think they're doing it to be difficult. I think it's because they want to make sure that that's actually what's wrong. So I don't do that. And every now and then I do get a doctor with an ego. I will admit that. So that's my, so there is that as well. And so what I try to do is make sure that I can thoroughly describe in my own words what I'm feeling, like giving them the information they need. Right. So because, like, for example, when I went in most recently to the ER for what turned out to be diabetes, I did not talk about, I talk about pain. I have pain in multiple spots of my body, right? So I have to kind of know pain in my stomach. I'm pretty sure this is due to my IBS. Don't talk about that, you know, and try to focus on the things they need to hear. Like, what do they need to know right now? Right. So instead of saying general pain, I'll say that I'm achy, because that's what they need to hear, because that's the type of pain that's new and different. Finding ways to describe like the thirst. Like I was terribly thirsty. And so, the way I described it, I was like, like phase one of becoming a vampire, like you're thirsty no matter what you, and because again, it's my sense of humor. I'm just having fun with it as well.
Yeah.
And so I basically I'll try to look up medically what is this symptom? And then I'll rephrase it in my own words. And so that way, when I'm describing the thirst that way, they're like, oh, that, and he's like, oh, they get that. They can latch onto that. Even if I'm being a little bit goofy and silly about it, they're going to be like, oh, okay, they'll know to latch onto that. Basically, I give them the symptoms they need for the situation we're talking about. Rarely do I just tell them everything because things get lost. If I go talk to to a rheumatologist, I'll usually tell the rheumatologist everything because lupus can disguise itself like everything. So we have kind of our game is I talk about what's new that I'm dealing with, and then we play the game of, is it lupus? Right? Because it could be, but it might not be. Right? But with other doctors, I try to pay attention to the specialists that I'm seeing and give them only the information that goes with that. Like when I see a cardiologist, I just talk about my heart. I just talk about, the tightness in my chest. But if they talk about difficulty breathing, I have to kind of pause and ask, why am I having difficulty breathing?
Yeah.
Because again, difficulty breathing is something a cardiologist asks about, but it's also what an allergist or asthma specialist, whatever they're called, want to talk about. And so if it's asthma, I don't want to make the cardiologist think that something's going on, right? And so it can be tricky. It can be really tricky sometimes because of that. But knowing how to give the information that they need, how to communicate is really important. And if I do say everything, it's details. I don't just say my knee hurts. I say my knee, like in fact, my left knee is stage 4 arthritis. I'm basically going to need surgery at some point pretty soon. And I'll describe it. I'll say, it hurts when I'm moving the knee, if I'm under load. I'll even give a demonstration. I'll get up and say, look, I can stand up, and then I'll bend as far as I can, but like this is where it starts to hurt. And then I'll go ahead and go through it. Like it hurts really bad. I'm like, now it's really bad. And then I'll hold on to something and kind of go all the way down to a squat with support and say, but the range of motion is high. Look at what I can do. But I
Mm.
can't stand up from here without help. And that detail, like overly detailed information, is what helps them. So even if I do give them everything, I will give them intense detail on everything.
Mm.
And if they interrupt me, I just go right back to it. Like I'll answer their interrupted question. I'll keep talking about that thing if that's what I need them to know. Like don't in fact, my number one advice is don't get distracted. Whatever reason brings you there, if they get off track or they try to ask questions about other stuff, just answer their question, but then go right back to it. And then another part of the communication piece I've found that's really helpful is that if the doctor does dismiss it or say, it should, it should just be this and you should be fine, I don't argue. I mean, I argue, but the way I argue is by saying, I get that. I totally understand that. And I'm not trying to disagree with you here, but I'm still in pain or I'm still dealing with this. What could that be? Right. So accept their reason, especially if it's like a follow up and like, oh, yeah, you should be fine. And they say, I hear you, but I'm not fine. And this is what I'm experiencing. What else could this be? Right. Put the ball back in their court, get them to explain, what's going on. And if they say it should be, you should be fine in 8 weeks, I ask to make an appointment in 8 weeks. And I come back in 8 weeks if I can, or I'll call or message. It depends on the situation. Sometimes I can't afford another visit that soon, but I will contact them in that amount of time and say, hey, it's been 8 weeks. I'm still dealing with this. What should I do now? The last thing is I brought my wife with me. If ever I'm not certain that I'm going to be understood, if you can, to bring a second person who can bear witness to what you're talking about. Because when she's saying, when I'm saying, yeah, I've been struggling, and she's like, yeah, he's been in bed for 3 days. He's not working. He's da. I can't get, and then that also helps, especially when it's patient reported symptoms. It's not something they can verify with lab work necessarily. Like it's, well, your labs look good. My wife could say, and again, I hear you, not arguing with the lab work, but this is what we're dealing with. What else could it be? And having that second witness, if you will, always seems to help. It's like it makes a huge difference.
Is it very often that you see that a conversation starts to be dismissed and then you insist politely and then they actually act?
Yes.
It
Yes.
happens.
I used to just say, okay, and just leave. And what really started my understanding was actually one day I was thinking about an encounter at a doctor's office. I was frustrated. I felt like I wasn't heard. And then I kind of asked myself, if the doctor was a student, what would I do? How would I respond? Because that's as an educator, it's all about getting the most out of your students. I mostly taught middle school. That's like my
Yeah.
favorite age group, and they're notoriously difficult. But I loved teaching middle schoolers. They are the best, and I got to teach some amazing students who, some were difficult. And it wasn't always their fault. Like, that stuff going on at home, hormones raging, just whatever. But when I shifted my approach to approaching him like a high performing student, like a really intelligent student, because telling a really intelligent student they're wrong is difficult. Like, no, I'm not. I'm always right. I always get A's. So when I started approaching my care, my doctors that way, it worked. Just acknowledging, hey, I'm not saying you're wrong here, but there is still this thing. What do I do? What's your advice? And really kind of really making it collaborative, inviting them to join me instead of, you're not helping me. What are you going to do about this? Coming at them. Like I said, all that does is put them on the defensive, and it's not
Mhm.
helpful. And so that's where all this approach came from. And yes, I noticed a huge difference, saying we're working on this together. We're in this together. Let's solve this puzzle together. Even this was a situation with the diabetes thing, it was so smooth, very clear communication. Gave her the information that she needed, nothing extra, you know.
Yeah.
And then when I went to the ER, I kind of stumbled there because he was like, he wanted to know everything, and I was thinking, you don't want to know everything because like
Just
everything is
just
too much.
focus. Just focus on what I'm telling you.
Right. So, but he's like, no, definitely everything. And I was like, okay. So I started giving him everything. And then he kind of realized what he asked for. And then
Yeah.
we kind of narrowed it down a little bit. And, yeah, it's made a huge difference in my own nerves. Like, I'm more confident when I go into appointments now. Which I hate that I'm kind of almost becoming a pro at doctor visits. Like, but that, I guess that's the other thing. It's like, with a chronic illness, you go in so often, so learn from each interaction.
Yes.
Learn how you communicate. Learn what you need to do, because it's gonna be different for everybody, right? Just like every autoimmune disease is unique for each person. But take the time to reflect on every visit. What went right? What went wrong? What did I not like? And how can I fix it so the next visit goes better? Because there will be another visit.
It's a process that you can learn and you can
Hmm.
get better because it's truly
Exactly.
going to help you. So try to find ways for you to understand how you're feeling, putting it in your words, maybe do some research of what that could mean, but not
Yep.
with the goal of self-diagnosis, just with the
Right.
goal of understanding so that you know what to specifically highlight in those visits. That's good.
Exactly. I think that maybe when I get a few other things figured out, I kind of want to write like a guide, because there
Yes.
really isn't a lot of education on how to be a patient, how to approach a doctor visit, how to prepare. And there's the odd article and the odd thing, but I feel like there should be like a guidebook.
Mhm.
I wish that there was like an app that could allow them to, like, to log the information I need to log, and then to say, okay, I'm seeing this specialist and this is the information they need. These are the symptoms they need to know about. This is what they're concerned with.
Yeah.
I'm kind of working on it in my head. Eventually I want to get something down on paper because it'll help me. And then if it's something that's shareable, then I hope to be able to share it with others, because I feel like that's the hardest thing, is we don't know how to get the most out of our doctor visits. There's no handout saying, this is what we're concerned about. This is the part of the body we work on. These are the type of things we're trying to fix. If it's not in this area, feel free to tell us, but it might need to be dealt with by someone else. None of that's done. And so no wonder I was frustrated in the beginning. No wonder people get frustrated when they go see a doctor, because we don't know how to be a good patient.
Yeah. And you feel probably like you don't have the power of saying, no, what you're saying, like, I hear you, but it's
Yeah,
not what I'm feeling right now, or it's not covering everything that I'm experiencing right now. And it's
yeah,
also information that the doctors need to know because they're trying their
exactly.
best to help
Yep,
you. But if that information doesn't get from point A to B,
yep,
it's not going to be. So,
exactly.
as a
And
summary, what would you say your three non-negotiables would be in a visit?
I would say that the non-negotiable is, whatever brought me there, I need to make sure that that has been communicated clearly, whether it's understood or not, whether it's agreed upon or not, whether it's fixed in that moment or there's a follow-up or test that need to be run, to make sure I get across what brought me there. Um, and then the second thing is to make sure that I know what the plan of action is before I leave.
Okay.
Because those are the two most important things. Was I heard, and do I know what the next steps are? Whether it's we have to go get these tests done and then we'll have a follow-up or whatever it is, I need to clearly know what those next steps are. And then the third non-negotiable is it needs to be a good fit. Like the vibe has to be right.
Okay.
Otherwise I need to look for somebody else. And I say that because if for some reason it's not a good personality fit, um, it just messes with the whole process, because trust can't fully be formed. I can't relax. I don't, like, it's just not going to work, and it's going to be frustrating. And so I've learned to, if I can find somebody else, and if not, sometimes there is nobody else. Let's be real.
Mhm.
Sometimes we don't all have the luxury of just going to find a different
Yeah,
doctor.
it's hard.
But if it isn't, then there has to be a plan to fix it. So I will usually go and journal about that person and try to see if I can figure out, again, like I approach it like a student. If I had a student I couldn't connect with, I don't just say whatever. I pause, ask
Interesting. Yeah.
why, what's going on? Is it how I was saying things, how they're saying things? Is there something I can say to make this go more smoothly? Do I need to bring a second person? I really think about that part, because again, with chronic illnesses, you're in this for the long haul. When you have a chronic illness, you're coming back.
Yeah.
You're going to see this person. You need to find it. You need to figure out a way to make the relationship work, because it is a relationship. Um, and so yeah, so I guess that's my third non-negotiable, is the relationship has to work.
Can a conversation with a doctor work in a way that you ask them? So if you're feeling like the personality doesn't match or you're not getting what you want out of clinics, out of visits, can you ask the doctor, hey, what is it that would make it easier for me to prepare for these visits? What do you need to know in the next 5 months? Like what should I be collecting in the next 5 months and bring to your next clinic or not?
Well, I include that in the next steps. Like that's part of the plan when I leave. It's like, if there's going to be a follow-up, it's, what do I need to be doing between now and then? Is it getting
So you
labs
communicate
done?
with
Is
him
it,
about it. Yeah.
yeah, that's part of that. It's like, what do you need from me, over the next month or two? What can I do to, track this? I always ask for beyond the medication, what else can I be doing? So when I go in today, I'm going to have, you know, a couple weeks worth of glucose
Data.
readings, blood pressure readings, of vitals, basically, that I could
Mhm.
take at home to, to say, here's what I've been tracking. So you can do more than just look at the snapshot. Because when you do walk in, they take all these measurements, but that's just that moment, that day. They need to see trends,
That's
they need to
very
see
cool.
averages. And
Absolutely.
so being able to collect information between visits is a huge deal, which is why I'm so excited about what you guys are doing. because that's a whole other level of collecting data between visits that can help make that next visit go so much faster in some ways, because they're like, oh, here's all the information I need. And anytime I've walked in and been able to give the doctor or the ER doctor, whoever, data, the more data I can give them, they're like, oh my goodness, I have everything. This is great. And so one other thing I ask will say, if it's like rheumatology visits, anything where labs are involved and it's a follow-up, which again is what I'm excited about you are doing, because I'll ask, hey, can we do labs before the visit? Because same reason, I walk into that visit with the information I need. Instead of going to the visit and saying, we need to check these things, it's like, let's do it ahead of time. And it makes such a huge difference. Every time I've done that, it's been so helpful. And then you're going in to discuss the results of those labs in person instead of, getting a message or a call. You can actually have a conversation while you're there about the information and what's going on.
Thank you so much, Eryk, for the conversation today and for sharing your experience
Absolutely.
and advice to others. And anyone, if you guys have questions or you want to share your experience, feel free to put it in the comments below. And we hope to have you again, maybe
Would
for
love
another
to.
year. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right. Bye.